The last sound Amara Ndlovu heard wasn't the bustling streets of Dubai outside her hotel window. It wasn't the gentle hum of air conditioning in the luxurious suite. It was the heavy breathing of a man she once loved, a man whose hands were now wrapped around her throat, squeezing the life from her 23-year-old body. In exactly 47 seconds, this brilliant student's dreams would be extinguished forever. Not by accident, not by disease, but by calculated, cold-blooded murder. You see, what Viktor Petrov did that night wasn't a crime of passion. It was an execution, a systematic elimination of the one person who knew his most dangerous secret. A secret so explosive it could destroy his marriage, his reputation, and his entire carefully constructed life in Dubai's elite circles. But here's what will shock you most. Amara's murder wasn't triggered by jealousy, money, or revenge. It was sparked by something far more terrifying. A deadly diagnosis that transformed forbidden love into lethal obsession. This is the true story of how a seemingly perfect affair between a powerful married businessman and an ambitious young student escalated into one of Dubai's most disturbing murder cases. A case where disease became a death sentence, where shame became a weapon, and where silence became the deadliest choice of all. Because Viktor didn't just kill Amara that night. He murdered her to protect himself from a truth so devastating. He convinced himself that taking her life was his only option. Tonight, you'll discover the chilling progression of events that led a respected member of Dubai's business community to become a cold-blooded killer. You'll learn about the deadly diagnosis that changed everything. And most importantly, you'll recognize the warning signs that could have saved Amara's life, signs that might just save yours. This isn't just another true crime story. This is a stark reminder that behind the glittering facades of wealth and power, darkness can consume even the most unexpected people. And when secrets turn lethal, no one is safe. So buckle up, because what you're about to hear will change how you view relationships, trust, and the dangerous game people play when they think they're untouchable. The clock is ticking. Amara has less than a minute left to live. Over the next 20 minutes, I'm going to expose exactly how Viktor Petrov's seemingly perfect life crumbled into cold-blooded murder. You'll discover the deadly HIV diagnosis that transformed love into lethal obsession. More importantly, you'll learn the 3 critical warning signs that could have saved Amara's life, signs that every woman needs to recognize before it's too late. This isn't fiction. This is a real case with real consequences, backed by court documents, forensic evidence, and witness testimony from Dubai's most shocking murder trial. By the end of this video, you'll understand how shame, secrecy, and deadly disease created the perfect storm for murder. And if you're someone who cares about protecting yourself or others from manipulative, dangerous relationships, make sure you're subscribed, because these life-saving stories could literally mean the difference between safety and becoming the next victim. Let's start where it all began. Dubai's glittering world of forbidden desires. Dubai in 2019 was a city of contradictions. By day, glass towers stretched toward heaven, luxury cars prowled pristine streets, and money flowed like water through exclusive clubs and 5-star hotels. By night, that same city became a code playground for the wealthy and powerful, a place where moral boundaries could be quietly crossed, as long as you had enough influence to keep your secrets buried. Viktor Petrov understood this game better than most. At 45, Viktor was everything Dubai's elite society admired. Successful, charming, and wealthy beyond measure. His Eastern European accent added an air of mystery to his already magnetic presence. He owned multiple luxury properties, drove cars worth more than most people's homes, and commanded respect in every business meeting he entered. But Viktor's greatest asset wasn't his money. It was his ability to maintain 2 completely different lives. To the outside world, he was the devoted husband, married to Elena, a socialite who perfectly complemented his public image. Their marriage was Dubai's definition of success. Beautiful, wealthy, and appropriately distant. They attended charity galas together, smiled for society photographers, and maintained the kind of relationship that looked flawless from every angle. Have you ever met someone who seemed perfect on the surface? Someone whose life appeared so polished that you almost envied their seemingly effortless success? That was Viktor Petrov. Except behind his perfectly crafted exterior, he was hunting. You see, in Dubai's high society, extramarital affairs weren't just morally questionable, they were legally dangerous. The UAE's strict Islamic laws meant that adultery could result in imprisonment, deportation, and complete social destruction. For a man like Victor, whose entire empire was built on reputation and connections, exposure would mean losing everything. But danger has always been an aphrodisiac for men who believe they're untouchable. Victor had perfected the art of the secret affair. He knew which hotels offered the most discretion, which restaurants had private dining rooms away from prying eyes, and most importantly, which women would be too intimidated or invested to ever expose him. His victims, because that's what they were even before the murder, were always young, always ambitious, and always vulnerable in some way. International students studying in Dubai. Aspiring professionals trying to build careers. Women who needed his influence more than he needed their silence. For 3 years, Victor had operated this way without consequence. He'd seduced, manipulated, and discarded at least 6 different women, each time walking away unscathed while they dealt with the emotional wreckage. But on March 15, 2019, Victor's predatory system would finally backfire. Because that night, at the exclusive Atmosphere Lounge on the 87th floor of the Burj Khalifa, Victor would meet the one woman who would refuse to disappear quietly. The one woman whose death would expose every dark corner of his carefully hidden world. Amara Ndlovu wasn't supposed to be at the Atmosphere Lounge that night. The 23-year-old South African student was there only because her wealthy roommate had invited her to celebrate landing an internship at a prestigious law firm. Amara felt completely out of place among Dubai's elite. Her scholarship budget barely covered textbooks, let alone the designer dresses and expensive cocktails that surrounded her. But Amara possessed something that money couldn't buy: genuine intelligence that radiated from her every conversation, and an infectious determination that made everyone around her believe in possibilities. Victor noticed her immediately. While other women at the lounge competed for attention with revealing outfits and practiced laughter, Amara sat quietly at the bar, completely absorbed in a legal textbook she'd brought along. She was studying even during what was supposed to be her celebration night. Most predators would have moved on to easier targets. But Victor was intrigued by the challenge. His approach was masterful. Instead of the typical wealthy man buying drinks routine, Victor struck up a conversation about the landmark case Amara was reading. He demonstrated just enough legal knowledge to impress her, while carefully positioning himself as a mentor rather than a pursuer. "You know," Victor said with that carefully cultivated accent, "I've seen that exact case argued in court. The defense strategy was brilliant, but the prosecution missed 3 crucial opportunities." Amara's eyes lit up. Finally, someone who wanted to discuss her passion instead of her appearance. What Victor didn't mention was that he'd been watching her for 20 minutes, noting which case she was studying so he could craft the perfect conversation starter. Their initial conversations stretched for hours. Victor shared fascinating insights about Dubai's legal system, offered career advice, and listened with genuine-seeming interest as Amara described her dreams of becoming an international human rights lawyer. For Amara, it felt like destiny. Here was this successful, sophisticated man who saw her mind before her body, who encouraged her ambitions instead of trying to diminish them. For Victor, it was Tuesday. Within 2 weeks, their mentoring sessions had evolved into private dinners at discreet restaurants in Old Dubai, away from the modern districts where Victor might be recognized. He explained the secrecy as protecting her reputation, a concerned mentor ensuring that gossip wouldn't damage her academic standing. Amara believed him completely. The physical relationship began gradually. Victor was patient, never pushing, always making Amara feel like she was in control of each escalation. When she finally invited him back to her small studio apartment near the university, she genuinely believed she was making her own choice. She had no idea she was following a script Victor had perfected with 6 previous victims. But this time, something was different. While Victor's previous affairs had been purely physical transactions, his money and influence exchanged for temporary companionship, Amara challenged him intellectually. She asked questions about his business dealings, his perspectives on justice, his thoughts about morality in a city built on contradiction. For the first time in years, Victor found himself actually caring about what someone thought of him. This emotional investment would prove to be the most dangerous element of their entire relationship. Because when you actually care about someone, their betrayal cuts deeper. Their secrets feel more personal. And their potential to destroy your life becomes absolutely terrifying. If you've ever ignored red flags because someone made you feel special, you need to remember what happened next. Hit that like button to help other people recognize these manipulation tactics before it's too late. 3 months into their secret relationship, Amara began experiencing symptoms that she initially dismissed as stress. It started with exhaustion that sleep couldn't cure. No matter how many hours she spent in bed, Amara would wake up feeling like she'd been hit by a truck. Her once sharp mind began struggling to concentrate during lectures. Simple tasks that used to energize her now left her completely drained. It's just the pressure of final exams, she told herself, downing another cup of coffee to get through another study session. But the fatigue was only the beginning. By week 2, Amara was losing weight despite eating normally. Her clothes hung loose on her previously healthy frame. Dark circles appeared under her eyes, making her look years older than her 23 years. Her roommate kept asking if she was sick, but Amara insisted she was fine. She wasn't fine. Week 3 brought night sweats that soaked through her sheets and left her shivering in Dubai's air conditioning. Her appetite vanished entirely. Food tasted wrong, like metal or cardboard. She could barely keep down the protein shakes she forced herself to drink. The breaking point came during a romantic dinner with Victor at their usual discreet restaurant. Halfway through the meal, Amara excused herself to the bathroom and promptly vomited everything she'd eaten. When she returned to the table, pale and shaking, Victor's expression shifted from concern to something much colder. "You need to see a doctor," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "Tonight." But it wasn't concern driving Victor's urgency. It was fear, because Viktor Petrov knew exactly what those symptoms meant. The next morning, Amara walked into the American Hospital Dubai, one of the city's most exclusive medical facilities, known for treating wealthy expatriates with complete discretion. She paid for the comprehensive testing package with money she couldn't afford, convinced she had some exotic flu that required expensive treatment. Dr. Sarah Al-Rashid, the attending physician, ordered a full blood panel. The results came back in 48 hours. Amara was alone in the sterile consultation room when Dr. Al-Rashid delivered the news that would change everything. "Miss Ndlovu, I need you to sit down." The words that followed hit Amara like physical blows. "Your tests show you've contracted HIV. Based on your symptoms and blood work, it appears to be a particularly aggressive strain." The room started spinning. Amara's carefully planned future, law school graduation, her career in human rights law, the respectable life she'd worked so hard to build, crumbled in an instant. "That's impossible," she whispered. "I've only been with one person in the past year." Dr. Al-Rashid's expression remained professionally compassionate, but her silence spoke volumes. In Dubai, HIV carried a double death sentence. The physical disease was devastating enough, but the social consequences could be equally destructive. The UAE's strict moral laws meant that admitting to extramarital relations could result in imprisonment and deportation. HIV-positive individuals faced additional legal scrutiny, mandatory reporting, and potential criminalization. Amara sat in that consultation room realizing she was trapped between dying from disease and dying from shame. This is the moment when secrets become deadly weapons. Because Victor had given Amara more than just his attention and affection. He'd given her a virus that would kill her, and then he'd make sure she could never tell anyone how she got it. Do you know someone who's hidden a health crisis out of shame? Someone who's suffered in silence because the truth felt more terrifying than the disease itself? That was Amara's reality as she walked out of the hospital with antiretroviral medications hidden in her purse and a diagnosis that made her feel like a walking corpse. She had two choices: confront Victor with the truth, or suffer alone while the virus slowly destroyed her immune system. Victor had been counting on her choosing option 2. But Amara Ndlovu hadn't survived poverty, discrimination, and academic challenges by backing down from difficult conversations. She'd always believed that honesty was the foundation of every meaningful relationship. That belief would cost her everything. Because when she finally worked up the courage to tell Victor about her diagnosis 3 days later, his response revealed the true monster hiding behind his charming facade. "You're lying," he said, his voice ice cold. "And even if you're not, you better keep your mouth shut about where you got it." Victor's reaction to Amara's diagnosis wasn't shock, grief, or even guilt. It was pure, calculating rage. "You're going to destroy everything I've built," he hissed during their confrontation in his Mercedes, parked in a dark corner of a shopping mall parking garage. "Do you have any idea what this means for me?" Amara stared at him in disbelief. Here she was, facing a death sentence, and Victor was worried about his reputation. But Victor's concerns went far beyond social embarrassment. In his mind, Amara's diagnosis had transformed her from a secret lover into an existential threat. Every day she remained alive was another day she could expose their affair. Every medical appointment was another opportunity for doctors to ask uncomfortable questions about her sexual history. Most terrifying of all, Victor knew he'd have to get tested himself, which meant involving medical professionals who might connect the dots back to him. "I should have never gotten involved with someone like you," Victor continued, his voice dripping with contempt. "You people never understand discretion." The mask had finally slipped. The charming mentor who'd swept Amara off her feet was revealing his true nature, a privileged predator who viewed her as disposable. Over the following weeks, Victor's behavior became increasingly erratic and controlling. He demanded to know everyone Amara had spoken to about her diagnosis. He insisted on reviewing her medical records to ensure she hadn't mentioned his name to any healthcare providers. He even followed her to the hospital on multiple occasions, watching from his car to see if she met with anyone who might pose a threat to his secret. When Amara tried to end their relationship, reasoning that she needed to focus on her health and couldn't handle the additional stress of secrecy, Victor's response was chilling. "You don't get to just walk away from this," he told her during a tense phone call. "We're connected now, whether you like it or not. And if you try to hurt me, I will make sure you regret it." The threats escalated quickly. Victor began showing up at her apartment unannounced, claiming he needed to check on her condition. He monitored her social media accounts, questioned her friends about her activities, and made it clear that he was watching her every move. Most disturbing of all, Victor began researching Amara's family back in South Africa. He casually mentioned her mother's name during one of their conversations, along with details about her younger brother's scholarship applications that he couldn't have known through normal means. "It would be such a shame," Victor said with cold precision, "if your family back home learned about your situation through the wrong channels." The message was crystal clear. Stay silent or everyone you love will pay the price. Amara found herself trapped in a nightmare. The disease was slowly weakening her body, while Victor's psychological terrorism was destroying her mind. She couldn't concentrate on her studies, couldn't sleep without nightmares, and couldn't confide in anyone without risking Victor's retaliation. The warning signs were there: controlling behavior, escalating threats, isolation from support systems. Share this video to help someone else recognize these patterns before they become trapped like Amara was. But Amara had underestimated just how far Victor was willing to go to protect his secrets. Because in his twisted mind, there was only one permanent solution to the Amara problem: complete elimination. June 14, 2019, 9:47 p.m. Victor's text message was brief and urgent. "Meet me at the Grand Hyatt, Presidential Suite 2847. We need to talk about your future." Amara hesitated. Something in his tone felt different, more desperate than angry. Maybe he'd finally come to his senses. Maybe he was ready to help her navigate this medical crisis like a decent human being. She was about to make the last mistake of her life. The presidential suite cost $3,000 per night, a fact Victor mentioned immediately when Amara arrived. "Do you see what I'm willing to sacrifice for you?" he said, gesturing around the opulent room with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Dubai's skyline. But the usual luxury felt hollow tonight. The champagne remained unopened. The rose petals scattered across the bed looked more like a crime scene than a romantic gesture. Victor was pacing when she entered, his movements sharp and agitated. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his hair disheveled, and his eyes carried a wild intensity that made Amara's stomach clench with fear. "I've been thinking about our situation," he began, not bothering with pleasantries. "There might be a way to fix this." Amara felt a surge of hope. "You mean you'll help with the medical costs? Maybe we can find a specialist who—" "No." Victor's voice cut through her optimism like a blade. "I mean we can make this whole problem disappear." The hope died in her chest, replaced by growing dread. Victor pulled out his phone and showed her a series of screenshots. Messages between Amara and her roommate discussing doctor's appointments, photos of medication bottles, even records of her university health insurance claims. "You've been sloppy," he said coldly. "Too many digital traces. Too many people asking questions about your sudden health issues." Amara realized with horror that Victor had been monitoring her communications for weeks. Every text, every email, every online search about HIV treatment, he'd been watching it all. "You're scaring me," she whispered. "Good. You should be scared." Victor moved closer, his presence suddenly menacing in the confined space. "Because I've reached a decision about how to handle your indiscretion." The word hit her like a slap. Her HIV diagnosis, a disease he'd given her, was now her fault, her indiscretion, her responsibility to fix. "I've researched this extensively," Victor continued, his voice taking on the same cold precision he used in business meetings. "HIV patients in Dubai face mandatory reporting, contact tracing, government monitoring. Eventually, they'll want to know who infected you." Amara's blood turned to ice. "So you're finally going to get tested? Take responsibility?" Victor laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "I'm going to eliminate the source of the problem." The threat was no longer veiled. Victor had moved past intimidation into outright menace, and Amara finally understood that she was no longer talking to the man she'd fallen in love with. She was facing a predator who'd decided she was too dangerous to keep alive. "You're talking about murder," she said, backing toward the door. "I'm talking about survival." Victor blocked her path, his larger frame suddenly seeming enormous in the suite's artificial light. "Mine, not yours." What followed was a desperate struggle that lasted exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds, time-stamped by the hotel's security system, which recorded every sound through the suite's sophisticated monitoring equipment installed for VIP protection. Amara fought with everything she had. Her medical training had taught her anatomy, including the vulnerable points on the human body. She clawed at Victor's eyes, aimed kicks at his knees, screamed loud enough to be heard 3 rooms away. But Victor was stronger, more desperate, and completely consumed by rage. The hands that had once caressed her face now pressed against her throat with lethal force. The man who'd whispered sweet promises about their future was now systematically choking the life out of her. In her final moments, Amara managed to grab Victor's watch, an expensive Rolex with custom engraving, and scratched deep grooves into the metal band. Her last conscious act was creating evidence that would eventually help convict her killer. At 10:23 p.m., Amara Ndlovu's heart stopped beating. At 10:24 p.m., Victor Petrov realized he'd just destroyed his entire life to protect a secret that was already exposed. Because what Victor hadn't known was that Amara had been recording their conversations for weeks, storing the audio files in a cloud account that would automatically notify authorities if she didn't check in every 48 hours. The woman he'd killed to silence had already ensured her voice would be heard from beyond the grave. 10:31 p.m. 7 minutes after Amara's murder, hotel security received an automated alert from the presidential suite's sound monitoring system. The Grand Hyatt's VIP protection protocols had detected prolonged screaming followed by suspicious silence. Within 12 minutes, Dubai Police's Criminal Investigation Department had cordoned off the entire 28th floor. What they found in Suite 2847 was a crime scene that told a complete story. Victor had attempted to stage Amara's death as a medical emergency, positioning her body to suggest she'd collapsed from her HIV-related complications. But his panic had made him sloppy. Defensive wounds on Amara's hands, bruising patterns on her neck, and torn fabric scattered across the suite all pointed to violent struggle, not natural death. Most damaging of all was Victor's own appearance. Deep scratches covered his face and arms. His expensive suit was torn. His custom Rolex bore fresh gouges that perfectly matched samples found under Amara's fingernails. Detective Inspector Khalil Rahman, Dubai's most experienced homicide investigator, took one look at the scene and knew they were dealing with premeditated murder disguised as mercy killing. The victim fought hard, he noted in his initial report. These injuries required sustained force applied over several minutes. This wasn't passion, this was execution. Victor's alibis crumbled within hours. Hotel keycard records showed he'd entered the suite at 9:15 p.m., 32 minutes before Amara arrived. Security footage revealed him making multiple trips to his car, carrying what appeared to be cleaning supplies and plastic sheeting, materials clearly intended for evidence destruction. But Victor's most catastrophic mistake was underestimating Amara's intelligence. The cloud-based recording system she'd secretly established contained over 40 hours of conversations documenting Victor's escalating threats, his knowledge of her diagnosis, and his explicit discussions of eliminating her as a problem to be solved. When investigators accessed these files, triggered automatically when Amara failed to reset the 48-hour timer, they heard Victor's voice clearly stating his intention to kill her rather than face exposure. "You realize you've signed your own death warrant by getting infected." Victor's recorded voice told prosecutors everything they needed to know about motive and premeditation. Within 72 hours, forensic evidence had connected Victor to the crime beyond any reasonable doubt. DNA evidence, digital footprints, witness testimony from hotel staff, and most critically, Amara's own posthumous recordings created an ironclad case. Victor's arrest occurred at Dubai International Airport as he attempted to board a private jet to Moldova, a country with no extradition treaty with the UAE. His passport contained falsified medical documents claiming he was traveling for emergency cancer treatment. Even in his final moments of freedom, Victor was lying. The man who'd spent months planning the perfect murder had forgotten one crucial detail. In Dubai's surveillance state, there are no perfect crimes. Every movement is monitored, every action recorded, every secret eventually exposed. Victor Petrov, the untouchable businessman who'd believed his wealth and influence placed him above consequences, was now facing the death penalty in one of the world's most efficient justice systems. His carefully constructed life had collapsed in less than 4 days. The Dubai Court of First Instance had seen many high-profile cases, but Victor Petrov's trial drew international attention for its sheer brutality and calculated deception. Chief Judge Mahmoud Al-Zahra presided over proceedings that lasted 6 weeks. The prosecution, led by senior advocate Fatima Al-Mansouri, presented evidence so comprehensive that Victor's defense team struggled to challenge even minor details. The courtroom fell silent as Amara's recorded voice filled the space, playing conversations that documented months of escalating threats. "If you think you can just walk away and ruin my life, you're mistaken. I will make sure you disappear before that happens." Victor's own words condemned him. Each recording revealed his progression from manipulative lover to calculating killer, building an irrefutable timeline of premeditated murder. His defense attempted to portray the killing as a mercy act, claiming Victor had ended Amara's suffering from her terminal diagnosis. But medical testimony destroyed this narrative completely. Dr. Hassan Al-Khoury, Dubai's leading HIV specialist, testified that Amara's condition was entirely manageable with modern treatment. "She could have lived a normal lifespan with proper medication," he stated firmly. "Her death was absolutely unnecessary from a medical standpoint." The prosecution then revealed Victor's complete medical records, obtained through court order. The results were damning. Victor had tested positive for HIV 18 months before meeting Amara, had received treatment recommendations he'd ignored, and had deliberately concealed his status while engaging in unprotected relations with multiple partners. Victor hadn't just murdered Amara to protect his secret. He'd infected her knowing full well he carried a deadly virus. Witness testimony painted a portrait of systematic predation. 6 other women came forward, testifying about similar patterns of manipulation, secrecy, and abandonment. Each described identical tactics: the mentoring facade, the gradual isolation, the escalating control. Judge Alzara's verdict was swift and uncompromising. The defendant deliberately infected the victim with a life-threatening disease, then murdered her to prevent exposure of his crimes. This represents premeditated murder of the most calculated variety. Viktor Petrov was sentenced to death by lethal injection, with no possibility of appeal or commutation. The international business community that had once celebrated Viktor's success now watched his complete destruction. His assets were frozen, his companies dissolved, his reputation permanently destroyed. Elena, his wife, had filed for divorce within days of his arrest, claiming she'd suspected his affairs but never imagined he was capable of murder. Justice was served, but only because people spoke up, from the hotel staff who reported suspicious sounds, to the women who testified about Viktor's pattern of abuse, to Amara herself, whose posthumous recordings ensured her killer faced consequences. Comment below why staying silent is never the answer when dangerous people show their true nature. Viktor Petrov, once Dubai's untouchable predator, now sat in a prison cell awaiting execution, his empire reduced to nothing, his secrets exposed for the world to judge. His reign of terror was finally over. Amara's death exposed 3 critical warning signs that every person needs to recognize before entering intimate relationships. First, the mentor manipulation. Viktor approached Amara as a helpful guide, not a romantic pursuer. This tactic creates emotional debt, making victims feel grateful rather than cautious. When someone with significantly more power or resources takes unusual interest in your success, question their true motives. Second, escalating secrecy demands. Healthy relationships grow more open over time, not more hidden. Viktor progressively isolated Amara from friends, family, and support systems while demanding absolute discretion. Any partner who insists your relationship remain completely secret is prioritizing their protection over your safety. Third, medical weaponization. Viktor deliberately infected Amara, knowing his HIV status while demanding unprotected intimacy. Then he used her diagnosis as leverage for control. Partners who withhold medical information, refuse testing, or shame you for health concerns are demonstrating lethal disregard for your well-being. But Amara's case revealed a deeper societal problem: the deadly cost of shame-based silence. In communities where sexual health carries intense stigma, people suffer and die rather than seek help. Amara delayed treatment and avoided confiding in friends because HIV infection felt more shameful than actual death. This shame became Viktor's weapon. He knew social judgment would keep her quiet while he planned her murder. Dubai's legal system responded by implementing new protections for HIV patients, ensuring confidential treatment and preventing medical information from being used in criminal prosecution of consensual adult relationships. Women's advocacy groups established anonymous reporting systems for relationship abuse, recognizing that many victims remain silent due to cultural pressures. Most importantly, Amara's recorded evidence sparked conversations about digital safety planning. Her cloud-based recording system saved other potential victims by exposing Viktor's pattern of predation. Technology became her voice when silence was no longer possible. Here's the direct problem we need to address. Relationship red flags kill people when we ignore them. Every woman Viktor targeted showed friends the same warning signs: secrecy, control, medical manipulation. But those friends stayed silent, assuming these were private relationship matters. They weren't. They were precursors to murder. Amara's death proves that speaking up about concerning behavior isn't interfering. It's life-saving. When someone you care about suddenly becomes secretive about their relationship, starts losing weight or showing signs of illness, or expresses fear about their partner's reactions, your voice could literally save their life. Don't let politeness become complicity in someone's destruction. Amara Ndlovu's legacy extends far beyond one tragic night in Dubai. Her courage to document Viktor's threats saved countless future victims, while her story continues educating people about recognizing deadly relationship patterns. Today, the Amara Ndlovu Foundation provides confidential support for abuse victims in Middle Eastern expatriate communities, funded entirely by donations from people who heard her story and refused to let her death be meaningless. Viktor Petrov was executed by lethal injection on November 12, 2021. His final words were not an apology to Amara's family, but a complaint about prison food quality. Thank you for watching this difficult but necessary story. Your attention to these cases helps protect others by spreading awareness about manipulation tactics and warning signs that too many people ignore until it's too late. If this content helped you recognize dangerous patterns or motivated you to speak up about concerning behavior you've witnessed, smash that like button. Subscribe and hit the notification bell because next week, I'm covering the case of the Instagram influencer whose perfect life was hiding a murder-for-hire scheme that shocked the social media world. Your engagement literally saves lives by spreading these crucial messages. Stay safe out there.